have to fly in the next week. And I got a text message from the airline saying, Real ID is in effect. We have to make sure we know who you are, where you're going, where you're coming from, all of these details for American citizens. And yet illegals don't have any of those same requirements. And it just makes us all feel like clowns, honestly, when you're trying to comply with the law. The government's tracking everything that you do. We got to take our shoes and our belts off to even get onto a plane and travel. And then you've got illegals just kind of walking over the border.
Joining us today is Virginia Delegate Tim Griffin, who also serves as a prosecutor as well. And just want to jump right into it, going into illegal immigration in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin put out an executive order not too long ago and an updated tweet saying about 500 have been arrested, and he estimates about 100 or so of them related to gang activity. And just wanted to get your thoughts on that and your thoughts on illegal immigration together in Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, illegal immigration is obviously a problem in the entire country, and that's true of Virginia. I think that the latest reports show about 120,000 people were deported during Trump's first 100 days. And so I think Youngkin is really getting to that and figuring out, who's here that shouldn't be here. And I think there's a growing awareness in the country. I don't know if you have noticed this, but that it affects, crime, it affects the housing. Illegal immigration has had a very negative impact on the country. And I think we're trying to catch up now and see, how do we fix this?
Well, one of the questions I have about that is places like Fairfax, where you have the governor issuing an executive order saying this needs to be addressed, and they're not doing anything about it. How do you think we address and solve that problem where you have these very liberal localities, Fairfax here, other cities across the country, where they're just completely disregarding their president and their governor?
I mean, if it's a locally elected official, that's going to be up to the voters up there. I do think we can do a better job sometimes in the jails when somebody is brought in, they're arrested and it shows that they're not a citizen, making sure that ICE is reported. That has something to do with Youngkin's order. I do think that, we can tie funding to whether or not they're complying with ICE and reporting these numbers. There's a lot that they can do. Do you remember that debate last year that we had? I think or a couple years ago, where there was a Northern Virginia prosecutor who didn't want to prosecute certain violent crimes. And so the AG said, well, I'll go in there and do it. And that part kind of made me nervous because, at that point you've got, they're local authority for a reason. If the voters give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whether they like that. I don't want the state coming in and overruling what the local prosecutor does, but I certainly think there's things the governor can do and really force the judicial branch to comply with the federal government and ICE as well. I think a lot of judges are going to see people that come in that are, they're Spanish speaking people. They're there for a reckless driving or they're there for a DUI, and they just, come in and they do their plea deal or they do their trial and then they get let go scot-free, where everybody in the courtroom knows that they're an illegal alien. And I think that there's more we can probably do to, require the court to, notify ICE in that kind of a circumstance.
Even if you're talking about basic child custody issues, you have to prove who you are and where you're from. It would just make sense that in a criminal proceeding, there would be a checkbox to be able to say, hey, this person's from here or not. I'm not familiar with criminal law. Are there no checkboxes or no looking into it? I've had a speeding ticket. It was a long time ago, but they knew what my driver license history was when I pulled up.
Yeah, I think a warrant or a summons is going to have the person's address, maybe the phone number, a social if it's applicable, or a phone number, date of birth. But it's not going to have country of origin on a warrant or a summons. Going back more than 5 years out, we never would have needed that, right? Now it's something that is we're seeing more and more of this, and I think people are struggling with how to fix it. If you assume that, illegal immigration is great for the country, that we're kind of we have a foundation that the country is built upon and we have a people that the country is built upon. And if you try to change out the electorate, you change out the citizenry, even if you think it's a good idea, it's going to massively shift everything. And we're seeing that in the courts. And like I said, I think a big part of the housing problem is that, we have all of these illegals coming in and taking up houses, which makes them less available for American citizens to buy. And what is the result of that? The result is that home prices are going up, rents are going up. And so that's why I think we really need to take a stab at it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the other issue when you have open borders, you just don't know who's coming across the border. And it's like going back to what you were saying before, we don't know who it is. What else could we do, do you think, that could help us determine who these folks are that are coming through? Because, I mean, you hear reports of people getting government assistance without having any proof at all of being a citizen of the United States. I mean, there must be ways that we can track that way for somebody who's coming in asking for help. Another way, I would imagine, and I know people will be kind of about this, but I think it's legitimate. It's when people are going into the schools and bringing their kids in. I think the school should report that this person doesn't have a birth certificate that reflects the United States, or at least ask for, a green card or some type of proof that their presence here in the country is legal. And if it's not, I think they should report it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's like a growing question, right? Like if there are children living here, should taxpayers be funding whether they get a free education or not? If their parents aren't citizens, if they're not here legally, and that's a question we're going to have to, I think, answer. You said something that made me laugh because I have to fly in the next week. And I got a text message from the airline saying, Real ID is in effect. We have to make sure we know who you are, where you're going, where you're coming from, all of these details for American citizens. And yet illegals don't have any of those same requirements. And it makes us all feel like clowns, honestly, when you're trying to comply with the law. The government's tracking everything that you do. We got to take our shoes and our belts off to even get onto a plane and travel. And then you've got illegals just kind of walking over the border. And, I think some people have said, like, 100,000 people have been deported, 120,000 people. That's not really that much. It's not that much when you consider that the minimum number they say came in during the Biden administration is 10 million people. Some people say 20 million or even higher came in the last 4 years. And that doesn't even include the illegals that came in before that. We just have no idea who is here and the number of people that are actually here.
You were bringing up the Real ID. Got to tell the story when you were in a committee arguing with one of the Democrat, I think it was in the House, right? We're debating this in the House with the House of Delegates.
Yeah.
Tell the story about that. This is funny.
In my first year in the House of Delegates in Virginia, I introduced a bill to require photo ID if you're voting. And some of the Democrats were pushing back and giving me trouble. And I was like, hey, listen, like, we have a photo ID in order to get into this building. You can't even get into this locked building without it. And, you come through special doors, you come through, and they didn't like that argument very much. And I think it goes to show the hypocrisy, right? Like, everything is like, we walk around Richmond and there are armed guards protecting us, and yet they don't want that same protection for you and your family, right? It's like rules for thee, not for me, is like that if there was a motto of the Democrat Party, that would probably be the motto they would run.
It sounds about right. On the whole idea of ID and going through, criminally prosecuting these folks to be able to remove them from the states, what are some ways that you think we can be able to expedite that while trying to keep due process in mind? Like, is it possible? I mean, because you're an attorney, is it possible to?
I don't know. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but listen, we know that the left-wing judges they've taken a lot of liberty with the laws, right? And they're coming down, and now every single district court judge from Wyoming to Arizona to Vermont thinks that they can dictate what federal policy is on immigration and foreign policy. And one federal judge thinks they can overrule a president, right? So I think that there's like a wide agreement, especially on the right, that these district court judges are exceeding what their authority is. And so I think people within the Trump administration have asked a good question, which is, do constitutional rights apply to American citizens or to all citizens of the world? Does the American constitutional right belong to every single person in the entire world? And if somebody came here to commit crimes, Are they entitled to all of the same rights as an American citizen who was born here and pays taxes here? And the taxes, let me be clear, the taxes that we pay, they go towards the system here, right? That's buy into the system. So, you pay taxes here and then you're charged and you can't afford to pay for an attorney, then the court will provide an attorney for you. Does that apply to the terrorists from, El Salvador who comes here to be in MS-13 and, to pillage? That's a question I think we're going to have to ask and answer. But the Trump administration is increasingly talking about suspending habeas corpus, because essentially under the theory that we've been under invasion for 4 years, and the courts they want there to be like multiple levels of a trial for every single individual here that's here illegally before they deport them. So I think if judges don't start acting responsibly under the law and they keep expanding what their authority is, then the pushback is going to be something that I think a lot of us may not like. I don't know what you think about that.
It terrifies me, frankly. I mean, the last time we did that was, actually, I think it was FDR was the last time, wasn't it, with Korematsu?
I think so. I mean, I always think of Lincoln, obviously, but yeah, that obviously that did happen
right. During
World War II as well.
Jeez. Yeah. It terrifies me, the idea of suspending that, because it gives so much power to the government, and the libertarian inside of me is like, no. You don't want to do that, because you start opening up, a Pandora's box of what the other side can do if they have power again. It establishes precedent. So that terrifies me. Are you
suspending it for American citizens, or are you suspending it for do they even have it? Do you have to suspend it for a non-citizen? Because I don't think there's any
But the other
law.
side of me thinks about, like, what's due process? You have to be able to prove that the person's guilty. How hard is it for somebody to be able to establish, hey, here are my papers that I'm here legally? Like, I don't understand why that is a giant court process. Like, you got to give the person the ability to prove whether they're here legally or not, right? We have the databases. We have all this information. Show a birth certificate, show a visa, show some type of documentation showing that you're here legally. And if you can't, then you're out. I don't understand why that's a big to do. Like, I don't think you should be able to just kick people out. I think you should at least have them demonstrate whether they're a citizen or not. But I don't think that's a huge process either. It's, I have my license in my wallet. You know what I mean? My birth certificate's in my office. It's not hard to get those documents. It shouldn't take any more than, I don't know, an hour. Like, let's say a couple of days, but it seems like there's this entire court process where it's like 45 days plus, and there's so many of them, so where it ends up being months and months of a process. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, let me play devil's advocate. So I think that we're, approaching the right argument here. I'm an illegal citizen. I got picked up by ICE. I got taken out of my home. I didn't have any of my court papers here. I'm transient because I'm trying to work and provide for a family. I need to sit down with an attorney. So now an attorney has been assigned to me, but the attorney doesn't have any availability for 90 days. And the attorney has to have time to come down and sit with me. And I have to be arraigned first, and before I can even, be told about my right to an attorney. And then I have to be housed somewhere. And then once I talk to the attorney, then we have to schedule a hearing where we can actually present evidence. But first of all, I need to be able to go home and get my papers. So I need a bond hearing to be able to get out. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I understand the ins and outs of immigration law. It's not something that I've done, but I'm just saying you understand quickly why giving all of the constitutional rights that belong to Americans to the El Salvadorian terrorists becomes a 6-month process at a minimum. And we both know that it takes a lot more than 6 months. I mean, I certainly would be in favor of, just running people through, you've got an attorney, you have 300 people lined up. That's how they do a lot of speeding tickets. I was at a locality recently, and they just ran them through. They just ran them through. People gave their evidence there, whether they were guilty or not, whether they had a license or not, whether they had a calibration or not, and they just went bam, 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 and knocked it out. But we certainly, I think if we're going to do this, if we're going to try to give a trial to 20 million people, which is what some are suggesting, you're going to have to switch some things up, or we admit that some people just are not serious about this. And I think that, one of the congresswomen of the squad recently indicated that this is about making sure that we don't deport anybody. Remember, the Democrat Party, they have a vested interest in making sure these people stay here because redistricting is coming up. The census is coming up at the end of the decade.
Right.
And they want to make sure that illegals are everywhere. Otherwise, blue states are bleeding people.
Again, it's hard for me thinking about it. Just giving that much power to the government terrifies me. But the other side of it's true. I guess maybe something like you were saying, where it's a parking ticket where you come in and you just prove it right then and there. I don't understand why it would be ripe to where you would need an attorney to say whether you have documentation or not, unless they're trying to say that that's an admission of guilt, and so they're trying to stay silent that way, and they have to prove it. But I mean, even when you're in a car, especially in a car, you have to show your license. You have to do it. I mean, there's no not doing that. I mean, you have to do that. And many locations, I don't think Virginia is one, but many locations, you have to show your ID if you're asked ID from a law enforcement officer. It just seems like there should be an easier way to expedite this, but I do hear what you're saying, where they're using the courts almost like a malicious compliance kind of sort of way to keep folks here, and that's not acceptable either. There's got to be a quicker way to be able to make sure that you don't give too much to the government to where they're just deporting whoever they want, but at least making sure and giving the person the opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm legal. Here's the proof of it." You know, there's got to be a balance between that.
I mean,
I don't think it's
It seems reasonable to me to check their social security number. They provide a name and a social security number, or they say, "Here's my name and here's where I was born, but I don't have a social. I don't know what my social is." And you look it up in a database, and if they're in there, they're in there, and they're deemed to be likely an American citizen, and they get all the due process rights in the world. Honestly, if you've got prima facie evidence at that point they're an American citizen, that should be the end of it, right? We certainly want American citizens to stay here, which is, I mean, there's no other option, right? This is our home for all of us. But yeah, if you don't have that stuff, I mean, I just don't know where we got into this idea where courts give every single person that comes here all due process rights. I mean, it's like birthright citizenship. I don't think that the founders meant that if you came here on a vacation and you had a baby here, that now you're an anchor baby. Most countries don't give that anchor baby status away to everybody who kind of just comes through, and that's something that's been taken advantage of too. I think the West is in danger of trying to be so fair that they put themselves out of existence. I think in Europe, they're trying to be so fair, and now they're being, all these different nationalities of people from all over the country are coming in, and you see it in France, you see it in England, and I think that they have to ask, are these people here for the right reasons? Are they buying into what we're doing here in France or what we're doing here in England? Or are they bringing, values in that are adverse to the traditions here that built the country and made the country great? And I think all of the Western nations are going to have to ask themselves that question.
No, you're right, and it's many in Europe have called it an invasion. They've gone as far as calling it that, which is pretty significant to say that and say it in the mainstream in that way. And so I agree. I agree that we have to do something to tighten this down. Obviously, what Trump's done is great on the border. The number of arrests that have happened at the border have gone down significantly. So we've at least created a situation where people don't want to come in as much as they did before. So that's good. Getting them out, that's going to be the harder part. And I agree with you. There needs to be an expedited way of doing that. I'm not sure if I'd go as far as suspending habeas on it, but I see the argument. I do see the argument. I mean, at a certain point, we're going to have to go, all right, we've reached a point to where we are so far here. We've got to do something extreme to be able to solve this problem. I'm not sure we've reached that threshold yet, but we definitely need to create some type of system to be able to expedite the deportations of these individuals who are here illegally. I don't think they need to have an attorney to prove whether they're here or not. It should be pretty simple to say, I was born at this location on this date. Everybody's able to do that. And so I don't understand why it's such a big process unless it's malicious compliance, like you're saying, which I believe the Democrats are doing for sure. So we just have to be able to expedite this somehow. I don't know how we make that happen. I guess that's an act of Congress to be able to do that. But these things should be happening much faster than what they are.
Well, I think the Trump administration has argued that under the the Alien Sedition Act, this act that came out of the early 1800s, that they have the right to, deport people that are here to commit crimes or to undermine the government. And again, I'm not arguing that we should suspend habeas. I'm asking whether non-citizens should receive it in the first place. American rights in my mind, are for Americans. If you came here as a visitor from China, do you have the Second Amendment right to purchase a gun and to carry it openly? The Trump administration has deemed people that are here on visas in universities that speak on certain subjects that are out there for pro-Palestine or anti-Israel. They've just deported them. They're here on student visas, and they say, hey, if you're here to cause trouble, they're not giving them full First Amendment rights. In my mind, I'm for college students being able to say whatever they want because they have a First Amendment right to say that if they're American citizens. But if they're here from another country, here to cause problems, that's something else. There was that, Congresswoman Omar from Minnesota? She was recently at a rally, and she was standing there nodding as some gentleman next to her said, she's not for Americans, she's for Somalia. She stands up for Somalians. And so we're seeing this more and more. I think we should have immigration in America. I think we should be bringing in the best and the brightest that make the country better, that make our way of life better. But that's not necessarily what's been going on the last 4 years. As we flood it with refugees, and we flood it with people that came here illegally. We need to be prioritizing people that deserve to be here, that belong here, because they bring something and add something to the value of the country.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Thank you, Delegate Griffin, for your time today and for sharing all this.
Yeah, good to see you.